Interesting movements in the last 24 hours, but has that been enough to change the long-term look?
Let me into my zone. Please don't let me into my zone. 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 Please don't let me.
Welcome back to Krown's Crypto Cave. Wishing you a very happy and healthy, very much healthy Sunday morning over here from Helsinki, Finland. Too fucking bright, too early. I've been up since like 4:30, I think, which is not good when you need to be recovering from potentially illness and also my own surgery. My girlfriend also not feeling the best as well, but I think that she is starting to recover a little bit. She's looking better today, which is good. She's got a nice smile on her face, and she's eating some porridge right now, which just reminds me of Oliver Stone. Anyways, other than that, today, while I typically do reserve Sundays for long-term analysis, I think that I'll be taking a little bit easy myself for the aforementioned reasons. And then hopefully tomorrow we can get back into it a little bit more deep. But for right now, I don't think that I'll be doing Twitch today. I do need to take a little bit more on the easy side as my own health starts coming under a little bit of question. Anyways, other than that, I do want to say that... What do I want to say? Yes, the Krown trading application can be found at app.krowntrading.net. It is free. Take advantage of it. It's all good. We made it for ourselves, but we also made it free for everyone else. The open interest chart is now live. All you have to do is just click on the numbers right there, and then it'll populate this baby right here. It'll be updated in the next update. It'll be beautified, and you'll see it a little bit from a different light. So I'm looking forward to that. Also, you got your journal right here as well if you want to link up your API keys. But I do think that that is going to be extremely useful in the time to come. And more importantly, right now, we still see it kind of hovering in the same area that we've been seeing for the last, month and a half, 2 months, which doesn't really help any sort of change behavior, but it does kind of help remain with certain biases, which we'll get into during this video. Anyways, with all that said, let's actually get into the price action right now. Like I said, a little bit earlier of a look today in its fresh look. And I want to follow up on yesterday's first sort of thing that we looked at, which was the good old hash ribbons, which everyone in their mother's fucking talking about right now, which is great. Is it relevant long term? Yes, it does seem to have a pretty damn good history, but I do think that some people are jumping the gun here because whether it depends if like you squint your eyes long enough or not, whether this is actually going to play out. But we are going to have another chance to actually confirm a buy signal on this later tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Last night did not confirm a buy signal unless you are using the 24-hour clock right here, which I do have a little bit of reservations against. I think that when looking at something like this, it is better to err on the side of caution because we're talking about long-term price action. And when we go over this, of course, at the end of the day, it's not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, but I can certainly explain why I'm thinking the way that I'm thinking. And essentially, anytime that we've gotten a buy signal on this, it's not necessarily saying that, it's like right now is the momentous buy where, if you don't buy, it'll never be going lower than this. No, that's actually not true because in the past we've seen actually a very specific signature with all these signals. In fact, you will notice that the last buy signal that we had printed on 27th of December was right here on this price action, which the prior low was in. To be fair, we did not go lower than that before playing out a very nice rally. But does Bitcoin price action tip back on over after that? Yes, absolutely it does. In fact, if we go from signal given, this was a buy signal right there, to next low, about 10% down, which is significant as far as I'm concerned. The times that we've seen it before that was back on over here in January 2019. Again, getting this area right here on the 12th. And was the low in before that? Yes, it was. But does Bitcoin go lower after getting the buy signal? Actually, it does. And I'd say that this one's rather significant as well, being almost 20%, 19.5 to 20% from top to bottom on that next move. Then we can go back to the one before that, which takes us all the way back on over here. This one actually did get a more decent momentous signal happening on officially the 31st of August, which if we zoom in on price action right here, we do see that that's right around this area right here. So does Bitcoin come back down a little bit? Yes, it does. But this one getting the momentum well, although I would argue that this is a completely different look on the overall cycle as Bitcoin was already in a long-term uptrend after turning the corner from this long-term downtrend, which gives us our last few signals back on over in 2014 and 2015 right here, one on the 16th of January, one on the 3rd of May, and both of these obviously not getting the momentum very well. But was the low low in before that, this major spike down here? Yes, it was. And we're talking about this guy right here and this guy right here. Sorry, let me actually just make sure. This guy right here, actually. So both of these do get faded rather nastily. I mean, if you actually entered in on the buy signal itself and then you go to the next low, it's still about 15.25% down. Again, that's significant as far as traders are concerned. That is significant for long-term investors. I pick your own poison. And then, of course, this signal right in over here. Again, terrible timer. Does give you the top of this rally at 275 before heading back down almost immediately on this spike down from wick to next low, about 32%. So it's not the best timer, but it does suggest that the low is likely in if that signal does actually occur, which it has not been confirmed on our spot price action just yet. And seeing that as it is Sunday and we're going to see CMEs open up later today, I do think that offers up the opportunity for some fuckage. And we'll get into the lower term time frame soon enough. But as it stands right here, this one actually getting the momentum rather well. A buy signal right here. Yes, it does come down just a small amount after that. But again, this one's already kind of turned the corner and it wasn't a long-term uptrend. So we can actually kind of bifurcate these signals now into signals that come during long-term downtrends, aka a weekly downtrend or even a daily downtrend if you want to call it that, and signals that come during uptrends, on the macro scale. And we can say that, if you go through all these case studies, all of the signals that happen during an uptrend, they're pretty damn good for actually timing the momentum. All the signals that happen during a downtrend do typically denote that the low is in. However, it's not it's not necessarily saying that this is like the momentous time to be entering in. And typically we do come down at the very minimum about 10% after that, and at the very maximum, in this case right over here, actually quite a bit. I mean, obviously we do have a one-off right here. So while all the other examples did accurately get the lows in, whether it was a bullish trend or a bearish trend, this one back on over here from late 2019 December, obviously, as you probably know, the low was not in over here. The low was not in. Now, did we have a nice rally after that? Yes, absolutely. $4,000 rally is definitely very tradable, definitely very nice. And from this price point, almost like a 40% move. That's fucking amazing. But was the ultimate low in? Well, technically no, because we come down significantly lower right after that, maybe about another 50% lower from about 7,000 down to 4,500 region. So once again, it is going to be hinted at that we are going to have a chance to give an actual buy signal on this. But until that's fully and formally confirmed on these hash ribbon indicators, I would not say that we actually have that in place. And right now, we are just brushing up against the same areas that we've been speaking about for quite some time. So what I'll do is I'll now go into the lower term timeframes, and then we'll come back to the semi-higher term timeframes a little bit later with all this in mind. But I did want to directly address that at the beginning of this video to follow up from yesterday's analysis. So yesterday we did see the spike up that we were speaking about, and it did hit where? It hit right into the blue box territory. And as I typically say, over the weekends, especially it's not even over the weekends, like definitely Saturdays is the one in question. Usually moves get faded. On the next test to the next like medium term resistance, if you want to call it that. And in this case, nonetheless, no less. So I did say yesterday, if we take out 7,600 to the upside, I'd be looking for extension to 7,750. This just happens to be $5 short, which is close enough as far as I'm concerned. I'm sure that there's going to be someone in the comments saying, fuck you, Krown, you didn't get it right. You were $5 off. It's like, all right, man, understand that we're traders here. It doesn't need to be exact. But as it stands right now, Bitcoin is kind of wedging itself into this area once again. And you could even make the argument that it's kind of printing in a nice ascending triangle, which is typically a bullish reaccumulation formation. But the actionable points for this are more or less the same to me as we looked at yesterday. And in fact, I can move this down if I'm just charting this on the 4-hour right here. If we get a 4-hour delta closure, especially above, let's call it 7,600, I would look for another attempt back up into this region, 7,750-ish region. And at that point, if we do reapproach this region, I actually don't think it's going to be another rejection. Now, of course, that in my opinion is irrelevant. What I'd be looking for, though, if it is going to turn into a rejection, is another stab up here and then close back down below 7,600. If that were to happen, then I would be actually looking for some downside to emerge from that. But for right now, we see rising wicks even on the lower term timeframes, which is usually the way that Bitcoin likes to play out those quick liquidity grab moves. And then as far as even the short term timeframe ranges go, it's still the same as yesterday, using 7430-ish region, 74. Let's just call it 7400 because it's easier. It's a $50 region between this blue box, or sorry, $40 region between this blue box support just horizontals coming in and kind of outline this liquid zone right here. However, if we actually do break below about 7,400, or even just take out this wick low right here, especially at 73.80 on Mexico, even this one probably does it as well, which is 74.30 on Mexico. Again, I would look for extension all the way down here to test our rising long-term trend line coming in from the March 13th lows, like all the way back on over here, which is currently situated somewhere around the 7150-ish region right here, which does line up with a lot of areas on the daily. So as far as the lower term timeframes go, still more or less the same actually, even though we did get a nice move up yesterday. With a quick rejection for the scalpers out there. Enjoy. That's awesome. I got a lot of messages about that one yesterday. That's awesome. You know that you're doing well. Again, I choose not to trade the weekends, not because you can't make money on the weekends, just I just don't really care to. I'd actually rather focus on other things, especially when I'm not feeling all that well myself. Looking at our low term time frame also, does we actually, let's get rid of this for now because we don't really need it right now. We do see 4-hour Stokes actually nosediving here. And let's see, what would it take to reverse these babies back up? Yeah, 76.20. So as long as we are closing, especially below 7,600, I do think that this is going to more or less tip on over. With maybe another attempt back to the upside, but as long as we're closing below 7,600, especially, it is pressure. It is more or less losing momentum in the short term. That does not mean to say anything about the medium or long term. We'll get to that in a bit. The 3 hour is actually a little bit higher than that at 76.50-ish region. The 2 hour is probably going to be right where we are right now at 75.80, and the hourly, I'm going to imagine, is probably somewhere around this region as well. So they're all kind of flailing around, and it is accurately getting both our short-term support and resistance basically between about 70. What do we want to call, like 74? We could call it like 74.50 on a short-term time frame closure, like an hourly or 2 hour, or 76.20 on a very short term, like an hourly or 2 hour. Although I really don't like using those as like actionable trades. A 4 hour probably better, although going to give you up a little bit less of an edge. But more importantly, we are seeing 4 hour RSI kind of lose its luster right here, and I do think that it's ready for a little bit of downside. 4 hour historical volatility percentile is absolutely catastrophically low right here, and I would be looking for a relatively nice move sooner rather than later, as anytime that we do get this low, getting into the single digits, that's going to precipitate like $500 to $1,000 plus moves, and can really spur it on much more massive moves than that, $1,000 plus, and that's actually going to lead on into our medium and higher term time frame analysis, which I do think is very much interesting right now. So just kind of going back into the annals of history right here. The last time that we were kind of this low in the single digit territory, this was late 2019, which, if I remind myself, that was this whole move down from basically like 10.5 all the way to 6.4. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're always going to have a move to the downside. It's direction independent, it's direction neutral, but it is suggesting that we are going to have a nice move. And this, I think, is further enhanced and further verified by our look at the 12 hour, which we've been keeping a keen eye on, as this one's really been getting the whole macro very, 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 very well. Not just with our momentum oscillators right here, like our fucking 12 hour Stokes, which is just a goddamn cheat code at this point. And we do see this trend line coming in right here. Also a more long-term trend line getting our last few highs from 8th of February at 10,500. Also this guy right here at 91.50 a few weeks later. And then more recently on the 8th of April, before about a $600, $700 move to the downside. And then once again, we will be kind of approaching it if we even do break this trend line right here on the more aggressive slant, which I don't think is actually all that relevant. So I just keep it on this guy right here. But overall, that to me is very important, because it would imply the next sort of short and medium term downside move, probably back down at the very least to 7,100 or 7,150, as we spoke about earlier with the medium time frame range. And you could also even say this a long term at this point as well. What's more important to me is the 12-hour historical volatility percentile. This is very mature, and I stick with what I've been saying. I think that we're going to be breaking this this week. Probably in the next few days. I very rarely say aggressive things like that, but I do feel quite justified in doing something like this, because anytime that we've seen this sort of contraction phase for this long, we're looking at a big bad move. And to even find the last relevant area that we have something like this, we have to go all the way back to November 2018, which we probably remember was this whole area right here, going all the way from 6,500 down to 3,100 right here. Again, does not imply that we're going to always be going down. It's direction neutral, but it does imply that we're going to be having a massive move. This one being 50% right in over here. And I do think that other than that, do we have another example? We have another example on this guy. This one, not even as aggressive as you can see. Didn't print as high for our initial spike, but does operate over the course of like a couple months from April to an apex in May, June. So April, May, June. Yeah, so two to 3 months, kind of like what we're dealing with right now. And that precipitates a big, massive move. This one also happens to be the downside, going all the way from about 10.5 down to 7,000-ish region. So just to give you an idea of kind of what we're dealing with, I do think that both the 4-hour and the 12-hour have great interplay with each other, as you'd imagine. And I do think that we're going to be getting a big bad move sooner rather than later. Now, here's the thing. I really like the 12-hour read on this one, because the 12-hour reverse Stochastic indicator is actually telling us that we're going to cross back down to the downside. Hey, what the fuck's going on here? Why is it so difficult to read? We can actually just read it right there. So that's great. 74.90-ish region. So I really like even the short-term time frame range right now as kind of generating much more impressive price action. And remember, tying it back into the hash ribbon signal, even if we do get a buy signal, I do think that it's actually very likely that we will come back down at least to the low 6,000s. But I don't think that we'll be making a new low below our current like $4,000 low or whatever it is. I don't know exactly what it is to the T, to be honest with you. But my point is that I do think that there'd be another spike down somewhere around the low 6,000s, upper 5,000s, and that's probably gonna be a very long-term buy. And actually would be interested in that trade for a long-term trade. Potentially months, maybe years, depending upon how that kind of operates. Remember, also we do have events coming in, or fundamental events coming into the picture as well, with the halving. And this is, funnily enough, correlated directly with the apex on what we see right here, basically in the early teens in May. But I do believe that we're going to be breaking this trend line on it very, very soon. Anywhere around the end of April to beginning of May is extreme likelihood. Again, it doesn't mean that it's always going to work out like that, but when talking about likelihood, it does insinuate that. And if we do get a nice break, now we can talk about the medium and higher term time frame look. So if we were to break to the downside, which I would denote as a break below 7150-ish region on at the very least a 4-hour, 12-hour preferred though, because it is going to be a big area. Technically speaking, we do have a measure move bringing us all the way down here towards 5600-ish region, which is essentially in line with what I'd be looking for from the hash ribbon signal. Even on a pullback to that that'd probably scare a shit ton of people out of their positions. And that would probably be good enough that'd probably be good enough to scare a lot of people out of their positions. And I'd expect open interest to come back down from 666 million down to 550 to 500-ish million. That would be a damn good sign that we probably actually are going to probably are going to put in like a major low there and work our way higher as you've seen in the past. However, could it be that Bitcoin heads up first rather than later? Yes, possibly. I need to get rid of this because I want to focus on the medium timeframes now. And the upside's more difficult here because I don't feel. I feel like this market's turning rather bullish as far as sentiment goes, especially from some of the more rude messages that I get sometimes. Like, how could you not be bullish? There's a halving coming, and I need to make money, and they're printing money like you can't believe in the Fed. It's like, okay, well, the dollar is actually rather strong right now because it's compared to like other currencies, I mean, it's kind of funny. Anyways, another topic for another time, maybe even later this video if I have the energy for it. So looking at this right here, let's go check out 12-hour RSI. Is there anything of interest here? Actually, no. It looks still okay to me. No divergences to be spoken about. I don't really see anything obvious. So I'd just be going off of Stokes and actually supporting resistance here. And the most obvious thing to me is if Bitcoin closed this next 12-hour dildo below like 7450-ish region, that would be pretty damn good for bringing this baby back to like 7100, 7150-ish region. Although, could it also be done on a 4-hour? Well, they will close at the same time, to be fair. Anywhere below is about 7430, we'll call it. I think that you could even move that up now to like 7480-ish region just because that's where our last few lows are. But I would like to be consistent with this last liquid zone right here. We could maybe get a little bit more aggressive with it, as yesterday did prove to be a little bit of an interesting day. maybe somewhere around the 21 on this time frame, but more or less the same. And I could just basically say 74.50ish now. If you want to be more conservative, 7400. So I don't mean to change those around on you. I just feel like right now, because this area is really tightening up, you probably could be a little bit more aggressive on this one. $50 not going to make a huge difference in the grand scheme of things. And of course, again, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, but with CMEs opening up later today and a potential buy signal on the hash ribbons being printed, I do think that today is either ripe for fuckery or even if it's not ripe for fuckery, then I'd still actually be looking for some downside overall. It's just I'd be looking to buy that downside. So now let's talk about some of the more interesting time frames in the on the higher side, which I think we already spoke about the daily more or less. We see daily Stochs still heading up here, although they will be meeting this trend line sooner rather than later on the next tick or two, which is going to be right at the edge of the critical zone for the bulls, which usually going to provide some pushback on that region. Daily RSI still looks, I don't really have too much to say about this. I don't really have a strong opinion on this. Actually, it's neither bullish nor bearish. It's kind of just neutral. It looks constructive. I don't see anything that's like obviously saying that it's bearish or bullish. I just see that as kind of neutral-ish, but just kind of neutral-ish. I don't really have anything to say about that. Daily Jewel is kind of hanging in there. Probably does get another lift off in the short term, but I really want to compare this with what we're looking at on CMEs. And when we look at CMEs, do we see anything of interest here either? Well, we do see some pretty nasty hidden bearish divergence going all the way back here. Problem is, this is really far away. This is early March, and we are now in late April or mid to late April, you could call it. So is it really relevant to this point over here when Bitcoin was admittedly above 9200 on CMEs? No, and we also haven't even confirmed a local high here either. So is it relevant? Well, it's more relevant to this point right here, and it's not even relevant to begin with because we don't even have a local high confirmed. But what would confirm this as a local high? Well, it did kind of close a little bit. What is it, a hangman doll? It's technically not at the top, but it would confirm as a local high if we even just take out the bottom side of this, which is where 74.50. So I do feel justified in now moving that actionable point up, but I need to see CMEs trading, open for trading, which is going to happen later tonight at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. And if they do even move below Friday's low, which is again 74.65, and that's probably spot correlated about 74.50ish region on even like a 2-hour close, 4-hour probably a lot better though, just in case. Then I would be looking for this baby to come all the way back down to 7100, 7150-ish region down here. And I would be looking probably for daily oscillators to turn back down along with it. Let's see where the Stokes would turn down. Yeah, below 7500, they will turn back down. So that area is going to be critical. I do like how the short term, medium term, and long term actually all kind of correlated with each other now. So this is typically when the magic does happen. Looking at historical volatility percentile, saying that, or kind of further justifying that a big move is brewing probably this week. And I do think that it's time to be paying attention to this asset. I've been saying this past week was going to be, more or less short-term moves. Now I'm feeling very strongly that we're going to see some interesting stuff this week. Looking at the daily Jewel, this is actually a hodl your long signal for CMEs. That's probably the most bullish thing that I can come up with as well. So as long as that's still playing out, I suppose the upside is still certainly in the cards. Maybe another run up to officially like $8,000, but I do want to pull my attention back over here to the 2-day, which I've been putting a lot of emphasis on. And realistically, the 2-day is getting the upside very, 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 very well here. Now, technically speaking, the 2-day Jewel actually does have that same hodl your long signal as well. So I've never had, I'll put it this way, I've never had any fucking success trading against the Jewel. It's my best tool, and anytime that I've disagreed with it, it's been me that's wrong, and that's exactly how it should be. Fucking obviously tentacles over opinion. No shit. That's why I say I don't trade my opinion. I'd be broke if I traded my opinion. I trade technical analysis, which is actually giving potentially a hodl your long signal right there. Although I'm very skeptical about this one, which I do think that it's important to say, because as long as we are held below the 55 exponential moving average, this green moving average right here, the 2-day death cross is still very much relevant. And I want to take this even a step further and go back into the annals of history once again and kind of shore up this whole analysis in the sense that now it's starting to look a little bit more clear to myself that as long as we're closing 2-day totals below the 55, which again is 75.69, I believe we just closed one last night, or did we? Yeah, we did close one last night, and it's still being held below. and this does look like a rejection of the 200 exponential moving average to me. I do think that there's a threat of a decently sized downwards movement. We are going to likely see, we're not going to see 2-day Stochs cross the downside here, but we will if we do close this next 2-day below 7350-ish region. So that one's actually a little bit less correlated with any of the other things that we're looking at, but it's going to likely get hit on, and you can kind of see the avalanche of effects if Bitcoin does head back down about 7100 in the next couple days, which I do think that we're getting ready for a move here. My point is that the last few times that we've seen this exact example in Bitcoin price action history was back on over here 2018 right here in September. Bitcoin does initially kind of drop back down, hold its own, and then rallies up to the 55, gets rejected by it. And then as long as it's below the 21, it's pressure onto the downside. So while I do think that, being held below the 55 is bad enough, it's really once we lose the 21, which is currently at 7150-ish region, that's where I actually do look for a big bad downside move. And if history is anything to go off of, the last one that we had from top to bottom after getting that last rejection below the 21 was about 50%. And might I remind myself, this was coming during a period of very, 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 very low historical volatility percentile, and that was actually the last time that we saw the 12-hour take this long contracting, just saying. The time before that we've actually seen the signal in Bitcoin's history was back and over here. This one a little bit more relevant, I think, as it was in 2014, 2015. Price action very far away from the cross, which sounds pretty damn similar. And what happens after that? Bitcoin does put in this, ascending broadening wedge, which is a pattern of redistribution. In fact, I think I have it charted out there. There we go. And what happens? Bitcoin does, after getting the cross, test back up to the 55 and even 200, which is kind of what we've done already. And then slowly but surely kind of tips on back over. Once it loses the 21 right here, it gives a few more tests to it on these failed rally attempts, and then ultimately down about 52%. So keep in mind also, this signal took quite a bit of time to play out, from signal given on the 20th of October to dooms drop was about 2 months to early December. Do you call it right here in like start of December? Do you call it right here? Technically it'd be right here, although I'd say if you're using the 21 as a way to kind of standardize, about a month and a half, a little bit more than that. And then of course back in 2018 as well, we got the same sort of look on this one, which I forgot to talk about, taking about 2 months from early September to early November before playing out that move. For perspective, we got this signal in late March, and we are now in late April, and not even 1 month away actually. So as it stands right now, would it be an outlier for this thing to just like fucking red dildo its way all the way to the downside from here? No, it wouldn't. It would probably take some time if it is going to happen, at least another few weeks for like the big bad move to happen. And perhaps another month, by that metric as well. And to be fair, both of those signals were consistently 50% down, right? Which we do see if we were to kind of just shave off 50% from this price action right here, that actually put us back down into the low 3000s. So we would actually make about a new low or kind of around a new low. If that were to happen. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that's going to happen. I think that there's a lot of things that need to be ticked off beforehand, but first and foremost, again, the way that I'm kind of looking at this is the way that I've been saying for a while. I look at this as a rising channel. The volume signature does confirm this. The historical volatility percentile contraction along the whole way does help kind of shore up that case that it's likely it's all one phase. And then the open interest of, unfortunately, we don't have data going back over to the 13th of March, but you would have seen an oscillation between here and 550 million, which is not a new behavior. It's consolidation is what it is. Now, again, does this mean that we can't have a consolidation before green dildoing up? Of course it can, but I'd still be going off of these critical areas, and I don't really have any real legitimate reason to change my opinion here, especially as long as we're closing 2-day dildos below the 55. So I'll probably actually end up putting on the same short position that I put on the other day at around 7,800-ish region, or what? How high did we get up there? Wait, what the fuck? We only got up to 78? No, that can't be right. We got up higher than that. Okay. Well, I guess we did get up there, which I let go, obviously, because I can't even fucking remember where it was. But this next sort of, I do think that I probably will wait off on that. I want to see CMEs open for trading because I do feel like we might get another test back up into this region, and then maybe I might reposition there. It's a very easy trade to be managing, and of course, this is not financial advice, I'm not a financial advisor, and I can very easily get wrecked on this trade because who knows about risk management? Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. Of course, no one gets wrecked truly if you have real risk management, but a very easy way to be managing this trade nonetheless, as you have a very natural stop point. And on top of that, if we even just took out this high right in over here, or even just yesterday's high at 77.45, I'd be bullish for a move at the very least into the mid 8,000s, like 84, 8,500. And realistically, I don't think that we'd stop there. I think that Bitcoin would work its way back up towards like 9,000-ish region. So we are at a critical moment here. The question to me is does Bitcoin kind of top out in its current area, or does it head up to like 9,000s-ish region, and that kind of offers up a new edge, as well as a nice long trade along the way. I mean, there's multiple ways to be trading this right now. But keep in mind though, the daily 200 simple and 200 exponential moving average are coming in right around that 7,900-ish level right there. So while I don't necessarily think that it's not always, I mean, how do I want to express this idea? This can really go both ways at this point, which is good from a trading perspective because that means you have multiple edges and multiple trades to be made. This is like the antithesis of like what people usually hate about technical analysis. This is actually what I like about technical analysis as a trader, because you know that you have a trade on both sides, and a decent sized trade on both sides. I mean, we're talking about $1,000 plus move relatively soon. So to me, I do think that waiting for, if I am going to take a long, I do like playing long, especially above 8,000, because I just don't see anything stopping this from 9,000 if that were to really happen. Medium term, probably not going to happen at snap of fingers, right? But I do think that it would ultimately kind of edge its way towards there. Now I haven't been looking at this whole week, but I'm curious what it'd be showing right now. Let's go look at the good old McDonald's, and what is she saying? She's saying something very interesting right here. We do see potential McDonald's divergence as Bitcoin is, for right now, obviously making lower highs on the histogram. So we are losing momentum here as it would stand, and Bitcoin is making higher highs on price action. The thing is that is not true divergence as it stands right now. Why is it not true divergence? Well, because we don't have a local high confirmed right on over here, and we certainly will not have a local high, especially as long as Bitcoin's closing above 7,500 and even 7,450-ish region. So the second that we confirm this as a local high, yes, we will have divergence there. We are not seeing the same sort of divergence in RSI. We're not seeing the same sort of divergence in any other oscillator that I actually am looking at, but it is actually in it is actually in the MACD. So if the MACD calls this one, I'm going to add it to my main roster of indicators, because that is unique and something that I'm not getting from my other indicators, which offers up a new way of kind of looking at things. So I'd keep an intense eye on that. Again, if Bitcoin does confirm a local high here, which it will do if and only if Bitcoin closes, like, let's call it a 4-hour dildo below 7,450 at the very least, 7,400 at the very most conservative estimate, or even just wicks below this last low right here, which is going to be different in pawn exchanges, but somewhere around 7,400 is basically where it's at. Then it will confirm a local high, and I'd be looking for that divergence to play out. But for right now, that is not on the cards, and I do believe that if Bitcoin bulls are going to take this one higher, they do it sooner rather than later, meaning that it's going to happen in the next couple of days. I would think if bulls are going to take over here, and I would not expect us to go back down below like 7,400 region, especially on a closing basis. So what else do I want to say in line with that? I think that's it for the MACD. Interesting though, because it is getting something unique there that I'm not getting from my other indicators, which is what I typically trust them for. The Joule would disagree with it. My RSI would disagree with it as well. Daily Stokes would actually agree with it. So fair enough. Maybe I take that back, but overall it would be a lot more obvious on that, as we have 3 drives, or we would be potentially making 3 drives of bearish divergence alongside 3 drives of new highs, alongside everything else kind of coming out of the same area. Now I do want to go back on over here and talk about the downside if it does happen, the downside and both the upside. So if Bitcoin does close a daily above 79.30, I just don't have any reason to not believe that Bitcoin's going to head up to like $9,000. Maybe 9,000 really means like 88 or 8,900ish region, but realistically speaking, I just don't see anything stopping it from that region. And I do think that would be a nice area long term, because I do think that that's probably where one of these long-term trend lines comes in. If I had to guess, something like this, we'd be coming in at the mid to low 9,000s. Yeah, so we would actually be meeting up with that. I'm curious what it looks like on a log scale. Log scale is going to look more or less the same, a little bit higher than that actually, in the 9,600-ish region from this current trajectory. So yeah, if Bitcoin does start to close above the 200 simple, especially on like an open and close basis, it's probably going to take its time and whatnot, but I would be looking ultimately for a move to head back up on over here, and then we'll reassess from that angle. Other than that, I think we've spoken. I think I've spoken your head off about everything else that I want to speak about. The main messages are, at least for myself, as long as Bitcoin today is closing below the 55 and by extension the 200, I do still think that there is a nice threat of a downside move. I'd keep an eye on tonight's closure, because it will have a chance to confirm the hash ribbon's buy signal on the daily, not the 24-hour, but the daily. And technically the 24 hours not even confirmed as well, because we're still working on that same, what do you want to call it? The same read, I guess. So it's going to take a little bit of patience here, but I do think that we get clarity on that situation, probably tonight, maybe tomorrow at the latest. And once CME's open for trading, I do think that we're going to get some movement and momentum being generated off of that. Speaking of the weekly, let's actually look at the weekly for a second here, and let me just make sure that I'm recording. I am recording, the microphone's working, and we're about 35 minutes in, so this is not going to be a short video. Fuck it. Anyways, looking at this right here, the most obvious thing, if this thing were to turn back around to bearish, is if we close this weekly below, let's call it 7,200-ish region. I think that that's pretty far away for right now, but just to kind of outline areas. By the same token, I would be pretty fucking bullish on any sort of a weekly close above 7,700. So that's going to supersede pretty much everything else that I've been saying. And if we do get that weekly close above 7,700, I think ultimately this thing's going to work its way back up to 9,000-ish region, give or take, and we'll just kind of reanalyze it as time goes on here. But the pivot points are the most important thing, and this is again who this channel is focused on: traders. So understand that when I'm talking about both different scenarios, it all hinges upon some sort of technical analysis edge, which is what makes trading even possible from a mathematical standpoint. And then we'll go look at probabilities in a second here too. But my point is that I do still think that there's going to be some downside, and I do still think that it's likely that Bitcoin's going to at the very least test like low 6,000s, in the next month or two, something like that. And perhaps lower than that, depending upon how that kind of approaches. But for right now, to put in perspective, we are still in a weekly downtrend, and we're going to remain in a weekly downtrend as long as we're below $10,000. Now, weekly momentum oscillators are looking good here. We do see weekly Stokes rejecting the bearish control zone and up, and they will be remaining up as long as Bitcoin price action is above basically the 200 simple on the weekly, which is 56.50. So perspective once again. Although remember that actually is where the measure move is on the rising channel for the long term. Weekly RSI is okay, not great, not terrible, but okay. And weekly historical volatility percentile is at extremes here, which we very rarely have gotten to in Bitcoin's past. So I don't really feel like we have enough good things to go off of. What I'll do now is I'll go back to our short-term and medium-term ranges, and let's go look at probabilities for these time frames. So again, 74, let's call it 7,400, although you could probably use 7,450 if you're more aggressive, for a move back down to about 7,100-ish region. That's where the medium and long-term changes back onto what is this, like a move all the way down to like 55, 5,600, bounces along the way. I don't think it's going to be like a straight line. By the same token, anywhere above, let's call it 7,700 let's call it like 7,900 on a daily close, and I'd just be generally looking for this area to be filled out in this region, and like the upper 8,000s, low 9,000s, it would probably be a nice run. So let's keep that in mind. Let's go over here and let's see what the probabilities are. So closing the daily, and this is admittedly for the medium and higher term time frame ranges right here. We're using 7,100 as a lower price target. The probability of it closing today's daily below that region is 3.25%, so not very likely. The probability of closing closing above 7,950ish region, we could even take this down to like 7,900 even, because I think that's exactly where the 200 is on the daily. Let me just double check. Oh, actually, no, it is higher than that. It's actually more around 8,000. So you know what, we could do something like this. Whoops, not 800. Probably pretty good probability of that though. 7%. So technically speaking, the probability is still a little bit more on the upside, but what this is more or less telling me is that what's most likely to happen here is that we don't break the long-term range on this daily dildo closure. We probably have a good probability of breaking the short-term range though, which to the downside is more like 70. Let's just use 7,400 because it's more conservative. And for the upside, well, the upside is a little bit difficult here because what price point do you want to use? You don't want to be too aggressive with it. I mean, I'll just look at the downside for right now. 24.25%. Let's see if we get really aggressive with the upside. Like what's 70? Let's do 76.50. I feel hard area there. 40 spot 75. So you know it's still the ball still in the Bulls' court. To be fair. The ball is still in the Bulls' court, so I would expect that if Bulls do want to take control, it happens again sooner rather than later. If the Bears take control, it's probably going to be like a slow molasses move over the next couple of weeks, setting up just slowly but surely, kind of tipping over and then culminating in like a capitulation or like a secondary capitulation. Probably not, certainly not. I shouldn't say certainly, but very unlikely to be as aggressive as what we saw right in over here, just because that's really intense and an outlier of a move, to be fair. So yeah, still probabilities are on the upside, and technically speaking, this is an ascending triangle, so it would agree with pattern and also and also just general areas here. So fair enough. But remember, specifically delineated between the short term, the medium term, and the high and the macro. I feel like that's the easiest part for me to not express myself well. So I hope that is clear. Let's go check. We don't really have anything new to talk about on traditional markets. What about other top shitcoins, I guess? We have Mr. Buterol right here. Mr. Buterol looking a little bit toppy in the short term, starting to put in some major bearish divergence, 1, 2, 3 drives. I do think that this one is going to be coming down in the short term, probably back down to 181 region. Currently operating at 193 though, pretty damn nice. So we did get our move up to about our side did say that we were going to have a move up to like whatever the top side of this is. It's like $200. I think that we've now seen that, and I think that this is probably going to have a short-term downside move. And could that extrapolate into Bitcoin? I think so, yes. But again, I think that the levels for Bitcoin are just so clear that it's just easy to trade that at the current moment in time. The levels for Mr. Buterol are a little bit more convoluted. The long-term level to hold the medium-term level to hold is 173. And to the upside, we are going to be hitting this order block resistance right here, it looks like, in this little pocket. A little bit higher, right around this trend line. So maybe we get another spike up. But I do think that short term is actually down 4 hours, so it's going to be under pressure here soon. Or sorry, that's 6 hour, 4 hour already crossing down, 3 hour down, are down, 2 hour are down. Hourly is hinting down, and I do think that this one probably wants to come back down to like 182 region. So short term, I do think downside, but I wouldn't get like too bearish on this until it actually breaks below 172.5. But I do think that we have some downside here. Weekly, the weekly close for Buterol is actually the most bullish thing in this market. If Mr. Buterol closes anywhere above 190 or 193, I'd be looking for this to get extended probably up to like what, 230. Let's see, probably somewhere up here. Maybe even 250. I mean, look good. Momentum oscillators are green. Weekly Stokes following the trend line, coming in back from our last few lows here, and reverting back up. Weekly RSI is okay, not great, but okay, at least for short term, medium term. But very, very short term, I do think that we have some downside. Long term, I'd just be looking at Bitcoin for direction still. Litecoin, what she's saying, same thing, looks toppy to me here in the short and medium term. Do you think that this one's going to be coming back down to 42.5? It's short term, medium term. 4 hour looks a little bit anemic to me. is going to be hinting at a golden cross here on the 4-hour. However, I do think that that's ripe for fuckery, especially alongside the daily closing today. So, if I am looking around the general market, I do think that we're going to play out some downside here. The question is, does Bitcoin break any of the relevant levels essentially to keep the major downside targets alive? And I think that's just like a wait and see for this next 48 hours of price action. Other than that, we obviously don't have anything to talk about on traditional markets. Maybe GBTC, we didn't really cover that. GBTC, what's it doing? It looks all kinds of weird, kind of putting in a nice doji dildo. Do you want to call it a hangman dildo? Maybe you could call it that. I don't care what you call it. It offers up a very easy way to be trading it. I'm going to put it in alert right at the low of it. If we take out that low on Monday, I'd be looking for this one to come back down towards the low sevens, like 7.25. But not really giving us too much unique things. Weekly did have a pretty damn good close though, to be fair. So hard to get too bearish based off that, to be fair. So anyways, to kind of wrap up my thoughts on Bitcoin. Already 44 minutes into this. It's fucking crazy, man. To wrap up my thoughts on Bitcoin, going across the different the different coins in this market, they are looking like we're going to put in a little bit of downside here, at least in the short term. For me, Bitcoin short term downside is like 7,400, 7,450ish region. If we actually close below there on at the very least a 2-hour, preferably a 4-hour, I'd be looking for extension all the way down here to like 7,150ish region, give or take a few bucks. That's where the long term can change. If Bitcoin does, for whatever reason, close a daily or 12-hour below, let's call it 7,150. Even a 4 hours probably bad enough. I would look for the ultimate downside case to come at the very least to move all the way back down to like 5,600, test around the 200 simple on the weekly, and perhaps more over time. We will just have to see how that one goes. I wouldn't be comfortable calling like a fucking 50% move to the downside from here, even though the 2-day does more or less suggest that. By the same token, if Bitcoin does close a 4-hour back above, let's call it, I want to see back above like this wick high right here, or even just takes out yesterday's wick high at 7750ish region, I would look for extension at the very least to like 8,000, and then that's gonna set up the daily for a nice close. Which if the daily closes above 8,000 or anywhere above the 200 simple, I'd just generally be looking for like the next month or two to bring Bitcoin back up to like the $9,000 level. But right now it's looking like short term is actually going to be down, especially looking at Buteral and Litecoin. Maybe another spike up in the short term too, just because, just to wash out some more people. This is why I do not enjoy trading on the weekends. But you kind of get my point of what I'm getting at right now. Just the levels right here are more or less pretty damn steady and agreeing with a lot of other things. We're starting to see the short term, medium term, and long term all line up with each other, and all of the underlying market dynamics are starting to agree with a big move incoming. So I do think right now in this next week of price action, probably sooner rather than later, is going to be really, 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 really important, and we're probably going to see some fun stuff. So I know it's been a boring last month and a half, but now it's starting to look a lot more ripe once again. So I think that's a good point to start to wrap up this video. I want to wish you well once again. I will probably not be on Twitch today for obvious reasons, and I want to wish you well. So take care, and until next time.